All right. Just so everybody understands it, we are officially on fire with the Amazon hiring process. I got a call today, and they're supposed to be. It was actually surprising because they called me and then they said, well, I mean, they didn't call me. I'm sorry. They they sent me a text message. And the text message said, "Hey, confirm your confirm your starting date for tomorrow." Today is Wednesday, and they said confirm your starting date for tomorrow. So I said, "Okay, I'm confirming it. I'm available, ready. Whatever. Let's get this show on the road." And I'm assuming I'll hear something back from them later on today, somehow throughout the day, and that's fine. But well, that was pretty good. It kind of brightened my day a little bit because I've been I don't know, I've been driving myself crazy sitting around this house, and it's just been burning me up. And just it's just a need to do something, to have an income coming in, to be able to say, okay, now I got more coming in, so now, you can, it's like a mental kind of direction you're looking in, a mental road that you're building, for that kind of stuff, because nobody wants to sit around, even though you may have that little bit of cushion. Nobody wants to sit around and just wait for that cushion uh to run out when you're constantly you're constantly using your funds. You don't want to keep using that money, and you know it's running out. You just got to be paid back, and all this other stuff. You just don't want to do it. So that's a good thing. And I know I already know it is it'll be a month before I get a paycheck, and that's fine. Because I'm already looking forward to it'll be a month. But my main thing is my plan is to, do the speed limit no matter what, and get my packages done on a daily basis. But the plan is not to rush and get into that crowd of people that are back at the warehouse early, and you got time to sit in there and gossip and whatever else is going on. When I come back to the warehouse, I want to come back, do my thing, and go ahead and go home. That's what I want to do. I don't want to get back and chit chat with whoever and shoot the shit and all this kind of stuff because it just doesn't. I've learned from various jobs that's just not that's just not the route you want to take. It's just not. So because it's too much going on in there. There's too many people that are have a favorite seat or parking spot and all this other type of stuff, and I just don't want to hear all that. I really don't. And that's just not my thing. you know and yeah, that's just not my thing because I always turn the other cheek, and I want to continue doing that. I don't want to be the person that I dream of being, and that's just not a route I want to take because in that world, my life falls apart, because my whole thing is held together by, not having any interaction with law enforcement, not having anything on my record, not a clean driving record. One slip up, and it's a wrap. One slip up, it's a wrap. So I don't really want to get into that particular. I don't want to really get into that particular kind of era of things. But hang on, let me take a sip of my coffee. Okay, yeah, but besides that, uh no, I'm a little bit excited. That was the email that or the text I needed to get. Besides that, enough about me. How's everybody else's day going? I hope you're getting revved up. Get out there and be all you can be, I hope. Um as far as what, probably tomorrow? Yeah, well, yeah, and ain't no probably to it. They gave me a date. It is tomorrow. Tomorrow I will be on the job, getting trained. I guess they're gonna train me for 2 days, and then cut me loose. Uh, Probably Saturday. So we'll see. It should be. I'm hoping that it'll be. I'm hoping it'll be a. I'm hoping it'll be a good experience. Hoping it does. The only bad thing about it is the 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 camera watching you all day. But like I said, I'm taking my time. Seatbelt, everything doing right. Uh, I'll be at a job where I don't have to drive my own car. I'm not using my gas, not using my insurance. The plan at the end of the month is cut this insurance loose that I'm paying for. That'll be the last expense that I'm absorbing on my own. That the the working for yourself life is not the way to go. I mean, it's okay if you can make if you're making a profit, then that's the way to go. But if you're not making a profit, especially with this gig work stuff, you're running yourself to death, running your car to death. With the railroad, you're running your life to death. It's just, if you can find something that's worth you having your own business and the expenses and all of that kind of stuff, and it makes sense afterwards, then I'm all for it. I'll never knock a person for choosing their own thing, but it's just it's really tough to make it with their own thing in this particular economy, because it's when you're working for somebody else, they're paying the bills. You just don't see it. But when you work for yourself, excuse me. Sorry about that. When you work for yourself, you're, all that stuff is coming out of your pocket. So it then becomes a little bit more important, because now you're, even though you might have made, you know, $8,000, you have an expense of, you know, $5,000. and then you have to take out another, probably 600, just for stuff that's not covered by expenses. Because like I say, and I'll keep repeating this time and time again, that I made $135,000 last year, but after expenses, it was about $10,000. That's not including any of my personal expenses. That's not including the extra insurance I had to carry. That's not including the money that I actually paid to get my vehicle fixed. And I think that's not including that stuff. Not including any of that stuff. So, that's a really important thing to think about when you're thinking about, you want to get away from your job, or you want to go to a business, or you want to, whatever you're trying to do, whatever your plan is, just good to it's just good to give it some thought as to as to which direction you want to go in, and and you want to think about the expense of that direction, because once you're out there, you're out there. You know, everybody looks at me, at least the people that I'm around. They look at me like, oh well, he left the railroad and did his own thing. Yeah, but there was a lot of risk involved in that too. I left the railroad, which was a shit show, and I went to rideshare, which gave me more freedom. But at the same time, when you do the math, I'm, on the road every day, 12 hours a day. Get home, I got 2 hours of sleep. I got to get up at 2:30 to get all my stuff together, take a shower, eat breakfast, relax, and get ready to get out there and deal with these customers. Then you got strangers in your car. You got strangers in your car all day. You got their attitudes. You got them changing directions, them upset with Lyft, them wanting extras, taking it out on you. And, after a while, it just gets to a point where it's like, this just ain't worth it. Putting myself in the middle of this shitstorm, and it's not that's not a one person thing either. That is it's not a one person thing. It's like a one person, one race. I'm not talking about one race, one person, whatever. It's just that level of people, in which I'm not too far from. I just financially I structure my life a little bit different, so it puts space between me and those people. But I'm not far from those people at all. I just made some different decisions so I could space myself, like I said, differently than them, who didn't make the same decisions as I make, and I make all the time, and they're still on that hamster wheel, still doing the same thing. But they're not realizing, or they're not caring that they're taking out what they're going through on everybody else. Everybody who they encounter is getting a piece of their pain, and until they realize their own pain and start doing the work on themselves, which can be done, it's real easy. Until they realize that, then they'll continue they'll continue to go through it because, misery loves company. Miserable people love company. One thing about, let me get another sip of my coffee. One thing about, one thing I learned, well, I already knew doing Lyft was misery loves company. And it was amazing that you run into so many people that are going through situations in life. Life may not be the way they want it, and that's fine. Whose life is the way they want it. And they're going through this stuff, and you're a total stranger, but it's your fault what they're going through. I remember I had one rider that I went and picked up this female, right? And it was actually in the same condos that my ex-wife lives, or where she used to live, or whatever. I don't know. I have no idea. But I go and pick up this customer, and then she immediately says, "Well, can you pull around back?" So I'm not really thinking about what she's talking about because, I'm not really too concerned because I am a card holder. Um, so I go around back, and then she's turned around looking, and then whoever she was there with, he comes out, and and the thing that didn't make sense was he comes out. I'm a stranger. You know her. She just left your house. He comes out, looks dead at me, and starts arguing with me, telling me that this is where he lives and take her, all of this, like, it was like it was my job. She ain't had no money. I'm an Uber driver. I'm a taxi driver. But it's my job to do all this. Then he started threatening me, he gonna kick my ass, all this other stuff. And she's in the back, you know, looking through her phone. And I'm like, what in the world is going on here? I mean, number one, sorry to tell you, uh, sir, but these are condos. You own you're buying the one condo right there in the middle that you're that's yours. But this is a community for one, and uh it was just a mess. It was a mess. But it did allow me to see, it did allow me to experience that. And then on top of that, while I'm on it, when I picked her up, when we finally decided to take off, I look at my phone and there's no destination. I'm like, where in the world are you going? Then she's on the phone with whoever, telling them that she didn't have no money, and she didn't think that she uh could get an Uber, but she ordered one anyways. And I get in there, no destination, because she didn't have no money. And I'm like, how in the world, how did I get involved in this mess? But it was part of rideshare. And then the bad part about rideshare is this. Like I said, you don't make a profit. You make a very, 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 very small profit. You take all the risk. You take all the anything. It's on you. With them, in some cities where you have to pay some cities you even have to pay, you pay the tolls, and then they say, oh, we'll pay you back. Yeah, but the problem with that is when I'm paying this toll, I'm paying taxes, and then when you pay me the money back, now I have to pay taxes again on that money. So that's a double whammy. I'm losing twice. Then there's another thing when somebody leaves something in your car. Then they say, "Oh, well, we'll give you $20." Okay, $20 to drive from Southfield to Gratiot at 94, a half hour away. I mean, you got to be kidding me. So I was finally. Oh, and not to mention, several people have gotten killed doing Lyft. Shot them in the head because you're letting some stranger in your car. But I had this in my head, this whole plan of going to Amazon, but I didn't think that it was going to work out. I had no idea if it was going to work out. I really didn't. So I'm glad that it did. I really am. I'm really glad that it worked out. Because that was the plan. You know, somehow it worked out. Because that was the plan, and the only reason I stayed with rideshare so long was because I didn't get any calls from anybody. So when I finally did get a call, it was when Lyft finally did tell me they deactivated me. I said, okay, whatever. And they wanted me to explain, what had happened and all this other stuff, these wrong directions they giving you. And then finally, I just said, you know what? I don't even care. I quit and was done with it. The same thing with Uber. I did them for about 2 years. That seems to be about my limit, about 2 years. So I am looking down the road. Uh, I would hope that this Amazon job would be, hopefully, maybe a little bit longer. I would like it to be, but at the same time, I want to be one of these drivers that stays off the radar also. So that'll be that's going to be my main goal. So, but we'll see. Thanks for hanging out with me in this episode, and I will see you in the next episode. Have a good one.